I like big books! And I cannot lie. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. I thought it'd be about time that I do one of these tagged videos. A lot of booktubers do tagged videos. A lot of these tagged videos I usually don't dig, but this was really cool. I like the concept for it. And so I thought, hey, what the hell? I'll do it. These are the big book. This is the big book tag. The 5 biggest books I've read, and then the 5 biggest books on my TBR pile. Now, I did something a little different with this. I kept it all to novels. I avoided story collections or anthologies, and I also eliminated duplicate authors because the list of books that I have read, the list of big books I have read, would have had like 3 Stephen King books on it. So let's check in with the Magic Duff Bucket before we get talking about books, because that's what we do here up at the Jeff Word. What have you got for me, Magic Duff Bucket? Oh, you have a poorly poured Peter Saison seasonal saison from Rapture. Rapture. So that's what we got. That's good. That's good. And I'm a stout drinker, and that's good. So we're just gonna get on with it. So starting it off, coming in at 444 pages, which, to be honest, I was surprised it was only 444 pages. When I looked at my shelves of the books I have read, this book is big, but it was only 444 pages. This is the Suntop edition of Horns by Joe Hill. This is a beautiful book. This is just the slipcase enclosure. And it's illustrated wonderfully, amazingly done. Limited to 250 with the snakeskin binding. Anaconda, to be clear. And one of the finest editions I own. So I'm not going to thumb through it all that much. I do have an unboxing video if you'd like to look at it. This is my first Joe Hill read as well, and I loved it. The story is about a guy who was accused of killing his girlfriend. He wakes up one morning and he has horns growing out of his head. That's how it starts. It's bonkers. It's beautiful. It's extremely well written. It's a great book. It's a great story. So I loved it. I would give it, I think, four solid stars. Highly recommend. Whether or not you get the Suntop edition or any other edition, I would recommend reading it. I don't know if other editions have fewer pages than this one, but yeah, 444. The next biggest book that I've read, it leaps up to 727 pages, and this is a brand new book, Ghoul in the Cape by Josh Malerman. Fantastic book. I did a whole review on it. You could check that out. I want to get Josh Malerman on the channel. I'm going to talk to him probably next month to talk about Ghoul in the Cape and to talk about Daphne, an upcoming book he has. This is a huge book that has everything. It has everything in it. It has horror, philosophy, politics. Politics are like horror. Grapples with celebrity, apathy. It's a big book with a bigger message. And if you're a Malerman fan, I'd say this is the Malerman Bible. But it is a huge beast. It has beautiful David Palumbo art. Right now, you can still buy it. I'm sure you've heard me go on and on and on and on and on about it. It's still available at Earthling, but not much longer. There are less than 200 copies left. So get it. No trade edition planned yet. And this would be a hard one for a trade publisher to do because it's hard to categorize. A lot of trade publishers like it if you could succinctly tell them what a book is about and in like 3 sentences or less. And I guess you could say this is about Ghoul in the Cape going on a cross-country road trip to avoid a cosmic entity called the Knot that is eating America from east to west. You could say that, but it's much more complex than that. So this I give 5 stars. 5 big world-eating stars. The third book on my big books that I've read list comes in at 798 pages. I read this book in 1987 for the first time, and then I got the Subpress edition, and this is Swan Song by Robert McCammon. I just recently showed this book to you in another video. This gets 5 stars for me. It's a post-apocalyptic journey where the world's been wiped out by nuclear warfare, but then something supernatural, good and evil, takes over the survivors. I gobbled this up in '87 during the summer. Loved it. Puts McCammon up there with King for sure. If you want an apocalyptic duo double feature of big books, then I'd recommend Swan Song and The Stand, and give yourself about 2 months to get through all that fantastic reading. The next book in my list comes in at 824 pages, and it's Clive Barker's Imagica. Now, Suntup is going to do a very fine limited edition of this book. It's Clive Barker's fantasy. Clive Barker cut his teeth on horror, created some genre-defining works. He is a master of horror. He writes beautifully. Damnation Game, Books of Blood, Cabal. These are all fantastic horror books. Hellbound Heart. In Imagica, he explores more fantastic fantasy elements. I read this when I was a teamster working in a produce warehouse, and I took this to work every day, and I shoved it up in my locker in the break room. It's beat to hell, but this is a much-loved book. Obviously, my Suntup edition won't look like this. It won't be in this sorry state of disrepair, but I'm sorry, that means this book is loved, and I will have the pretty unmarked one coming to me soon. I give Imagica 4.5 stars. It's an amazing book. And finally, the biggest book I've ever read in my top 5 biggest books comes in at 1,153 pages, and that is The Stand by Stephen King. You may be wondering, why does the dust jacket not say The Stand by Stephen King? Because this is the Glenn Chadbourne special dust jacket he created just for the first edition of The Stand, the first edition of the uncut Stand. I should clarify, this is not the original publication from the 70s. That was the abridged version. This is the uncut one from 1991. I got this book as a graduation gift from high school. This dust jacket also contains a liner notes, flap copy from Scott Ian of Anthrax, who is one of my favorite artists. But yes, I do have the original cover dust jacket underneath. This is an amazing book. This is one of the best Stephen King books ever written, and I can't recommend it enough. And like I said, if you want to get your post-apocalypse on, this and Swan Song would make a fine pairing. Fine pairing. I give The Stand 5 solid stars. No two ways about it. And of course, it would have been on this list, but I eliminated duplicates from authors. That is also a very huge book. But these are big books. These are big books. Big. So, what are the biggest books on my TBR pile? And the TBR pile is kind of a funny, ever-shifting pile of books. It goes by my mood. It goes by what's newest in town.
I'm new in town.
Did I get an arc? Is there a new book coming to bookstores soon that I might want to get ahead of? Is there a Suntup release that I need to read before I interview the author or artist? Or there are any number of factors. But when I look at the books I own that I've not read yet, that I'm dying to read, these 5 are the biggest. And coming in at 532 pages, which is still relatively small, is Little Star by John Avita Lindqvist. And he is, I believe, a Swedish author who wrote Let the Right One In. That was an amazing book. A friend of mine in the book collecting community, Russell Coombs, loves Lindqvist and recommends him as his heir to Stephen King's throne. I asked him of all the Lindqvist books out there between Handling the Undead and Little Star, what did he recommend? And it was Little Star. So this went on my TBR pile pretty high up because I did love Let the Right One In. I do have faith that this author can deliver the consistent good fiction that I'm craving. Up next on my TBR is a book I've had for a long time, and I keep looking at it, I keep walking away from it, I keep getting interested in it, and then I walk away. I don't know. There's just something about this book that pulls me in, but then other books come along, and since it's a big book, it's a big time commitment, it keeps getting pushed down the TBR. But it comes in at 692 pages, and that is Peter Straub, Floating Dragon. I find Peter Straub to be a little more academic and loftier than King, and that's different than Beautiful Prose. Beautiful Prose is more of an artist, poetic vibe. Academic is a more cerebral. I don't know. And Ghost Story is amazing, and I did try to read Coco, and I couldn't get into it. But Floating Dragon keeps drawing my eye. I have the Cemetery Dance Anniversary Edition of this book, and it looks cool. But and I've heard some good things about it. A lot of Straub fans like it, and I want to give Straub another try because academic's not a bad thing. So that's on there. It's a big one. Coming in next at 693 pages is Dune. This is the Centipede Press edition. To be clear, I'm including all the pages in the book. So if there's bonus material and notes, I'm including that too, because if they're in the book, you should read them. I'm not slicing them off and saying they're not part of the story. So this is the Centipede Press edition in the excellent capped slipcase. This is the unsigned one. I'm not going to take it out. I did do a video showing this before. But I am very curious to see why Dune has such a rabid following, how it could have spawned like 800 sequels to more or less acclaim. And really, I don't read enough science fiction or fantasy, so happy to put this on my TBR. Near the top, I think producer Jill's going to do a review video with me if we can get enough subscribers. Because really, she's all about chasing those subs. Liar! Liar! Up next on my TBR, this book comes in at 973 pages. This is a lot. It's a lot of pages. And that's Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth. I don't know a whole lot about this book other than it is Paul Suntup's #1 favorite book. And when Paul Suntup points at a book and says it's worthy, you better believe it's a worthy read. So Paul Suntup's never led me astray on any book that Suntup has published or that he's recommended. So this is a very intriguing read, a very big book. And of course, when you have a big book on your TBR, the size can eliminate it from being up next in the reading order because there are so many books and you're trying to get through them as many as possible to expose yourself to cool ideas and new adventures. So this is obviously a bigger commitment, but a lot of people have raved about this book. So I'd be a sucker for not putting it up there near the top. And then finally, you may be saying, well, what's longer than 973 pages? Well, the answer is 1,077 pages. And that book is Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. I've been recommended this book from several people. One, a really great friend of mine continuously recommended this book to me. This and Confederacy of Dunces. And I love the premise of it. It sounds awesome. But is it inaccessible? Is this a hard book to get into? I don't know. It is a hell of a commitment. I got it at a thrift shop So I didn't commit a lot of money to it. The premise is really cool. It's basically there's a videotape that when people watch it, they just cannot stop laughing. And there are groups that want this tape for their own nefarious purposes. The military wants it to weaponize it. A cult wants it to do. So all these different groups come out of nowhere trying to hunt this tape down. People who've seen it they'll just laugh hysterically. That's my understanding. I could be wrong. That premise right there sounds absolutely delicious. So this book sounds like it'll be for me. It is a literary book, so not necessarily horror or any genre fiction. And often I'm in the mood for that sort of thing. So this book dominates the page count on my big book TBR pile. So that's it. You could sound off. Tell me what's in your TBR pile. What's the biggest book you've ever read? Do big books matter? Do you get happy when you see that big book and you're like, oh, there's so much to explore here? I like it when I have a big world to get lost in. I don't mind the journey. Or do you look at that and say, that's going to take me a long time? I'm not going to read that. I don't got years. What am I, in prison? If I'm in prison, sure, I guess. But man, I got slack lines to walk on. You know, I ain't got time to read a big book. I don't know. So feel free to sound off. And also, let's not book shame. You know, let's not book shame a book for being too big. That's not cool. I, for one, if it's an author I like and trust, bring it on. Give me that page count. When I read a Magic, I'm like, oh yeah, Clive's bringing it now. He's bringing it out. Weave World was also really big too. So anyway, that's it. Don't forget to have something tasty to drink when you read books. Rapture, do it right. Enjoy beer. Enjoy a book. And always in these crazy, hectic times when the world seems to be falling down around you, just remember, don't lose it.
But stay frosty.